නිවසේ මෙවැනි මත් පිට රැඳෙන විස බීජ 99.9%ක්ම විනාශ කරන විම් ක්ලීනර්ස්.
Tonight, it's up to you. The EU ambassador says that Sri Lanka can't replace the EU market and that the GSP Plus decision lies with the government.
It's not easy to replace a market, and at the moment Sri Lanka has a bit the best of both worlds with the EU in the sense that it has preferential access. GSP Plus is voluntary. It's not that
Something's better than nothing. The government orders a price hike for Laughs gas, as the company says it is unhappy, but imports will resume. Coming to you, the Army launches a mobile vaccination program targeting the housebound with a special hotline for registration. We have the plans. Authorities reassure that everything is done to prevent oxygen shortages.
They are maximally utilizing the current local capacity to produce the oxygen, and the government has already taken steps to import oxygen from different countries.
While also promising to crack down on a number of discrepancies.
If we find that due to some other kind of error, if we have not included any of those information, that will be corrected after consulting both parties.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Thursday, the 12th of August, 2021.
කට උත්තර නැති වෙන්න කලින් සිග්නල් ඩීප් ක්ලීන් එකකට මාරු වෙන්න.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Hamke Kanai. Let's start with your local stories. Now, the ambassador of the European Union to Sri Lanka, Denis Chaibi, says that Sri Lanka has much to benefit from exports to the European Union, including special measures being funded in the island to protect the intellectual property of Ceylon-branded products. Addressing a webinar on the GSP Plus facility, the EU ambassador also added that the decision on whether it wants to use the facility or not remains in the hands of the Sri Lankan authorities, and all it takes to become eligible is to conform to certain trade-related regulations and necessities. He added that Sri Lanka will undergo a review in the next few months on what progress has been made and, more importantly, what concerns are held by the European Union.
within this context of the EU being a very good market for Sri Lanka, GSP Plus gets a certain importance, a certain salience, because since 2017, the exports of Sri Lanka have increased by 28%, and this has been very constant. So, you know, it's what I want to make as a point is it's not easy to replace a market as the EU market. And at the moment, Sri Lanka has a bit the best of both worlds with the EU in the sense that it has preferential access and it reaps a very good balance.
Ambassador to the European Union of Sri Lanka Denis Chaibi also explained steps taken by the EU to protect Sri Lanka's Ceylon-branded niche products in order to ensure that only Sri Lanka gains the full benefit by exporting to the continent.
If I take an example that is linked to this high-end market, let's take cinnamon. Cinnamon is simply the best in the world. There's no other cinnamon that is like Ceylon cinnamon. So what we've done here in the delegation, we have put a bit of funding with the UNIDO to try to protect intellectually the appellation of origin of cinnamon, pure Ceylon cinnamon. So that means that nobody else could use that. And if some people would like to grow the stems from that come from this island, but in other either island, this would not be allowed, and only the cinnamon that is grown in Sri Lanka would benefit from this appellation. So this is the kind of things where Sri Lanka to the next level in terms of added value for all its products, because this is something we can replicate for tea, for coconut, for pepper.
The EU ambassador also said that the decision whether it wants to benefit from GSP Plus or not remains solely in the hands of Sri Lanka's authorities and is not one that is enforced on the country.
The third point, GSP Plus is a conditional agreement. It is voluntary. It's not that we, the Europeans, came and said, you have to agree to GSP Plus. It is Sri Lanka who wanted to take advantage of the preferential tariff access that is allowed by the WTO rules within a certain framework. And within that framework, there are some conventions to respect. And the GSP Plus means that there are less tariffs to pay for the Sri Lankan exporters, but the plus means that there are more conventions to respect.
Further, the EU ambassador also went on to say that Sri Lanka is set to undergo a review of progress and to identify other issues that can be rectified to improve the country's trade situation.
We are monitoring the situation here in the delegation, but much more prominently by experts in DG Trade. And then we will have an inspection meeting, kind of mission, either virtually or in person in the coming month, where we will discuss the issues where we have some concerns or we want to see some progress, but also the issues where progress has been registered and there have been some advance.
Spokesperson of the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemantha Herath, put the fears of the country not being able to cater to the rise in oxygen dependency to rest today. He reassured that the government and the Ministry of Health has taken all measures to cater to a rising demand in oxygen through a host of measures which include importing oxygen tanks and providing oxygen generators to certain hospitals. Dr. Herath also touched on the problem of data discrepancy that had been reported in recent days, promising that such issues are being rectified at the moment.
Sri Lanka's COVID situation does not seem to be showing any signs of improvement, as the country's daily cases have stayed over the 2,500 mark for the last 8 consecutive days. According to data released by the Institute of Health Policy, the country's rate of patients testing positive for the virus has been placed at 17.3%, with a 7-day average of 18%. The data also shows that this is the highest test positivity rate showed since the pandemic first broke out in March last year. As such, yesterday 16,902 PCR tests and 6,540 rapid antigen tests carried out by health officials confirmed the presence of 2,987 COVID-19 patients yesterday. 1,047 of yesterday's caseload came from the 3 districts of the Western Province. 468 cases were confirmed from Kalutara, 310 from Colombo, and 269 from Galle. With the Delta variant said to be responsible for the country's current predicament, many concerns have been raised as to how the health system will cope up with a huge increase in oxygen dependency. Addressing these concerns, Dr. Hemantha Herath of the Ministry of Health says that all possible measures have been taken to prevent any shortages.
The Ministry of Health has taken every possible steps to cater this increasing demand, for which they are maximally utilizing the current local capacity to produce the oxygen. The government has already taken steps to import oxygen from different countries, and also we have already established several other alternative systems to produce oxygens independent of this mass scale production, for which several hospitals have been given with oxygen generators, and this has reduced the demand, especially in the periphery where the long distance transportation of oxygen cylinders is becoming a problem. And also several large hospitals have been given with large oxygen tanks in which a huge amount of oxygen can be stored at a given time. So that also will provide some kind of breathing space to reduce the effects of transportation. And also we have imported a large number of oxygen cylinders, both ordinary cylinders as well as jumbo cylinders. Further to that, we are also using the oxygen concentrators, large scale concentrators plus bedside concentrators to give oxygen to needy patients depending on the clinical decision of the different doctors who are treating those patients.
Meanwhile, the recent discrepancy in daily COVID figures released by the Ministry of Health versus data recorded by regional medical officers in the Gampar district and the Eastern Province have been a topic of serious debate lately. Responding to this, Dr. Hemantha Herath explained that the large quantity of data the ministry deals with on a daily basis could have inadvertently led to certain mistakes, but it will be looked into and rectified as soon as possible.
When a large number of data or large amount of data is gathered centrally from different sources, especially it is not like getting the same source from 2 or 3 sources. We are getting information from 26 health districts and also around 350 medical officers of health areas and over 1,000 vaccination centers, and this information or this data is gathered at central level, and we need to reduce the duplication and also re-entered data and similar things, and thereby making sure that what is presented is the most accurate data. And if we find that any deliberate or due to some other kind of error, if we have not included any of those information, that will be corrected after consulting both parties.
In the meantime, despite the rise in infections, the country's overall number of COVID patients to have recovered from the virus also continues to rise. Today, health officials confirmed the recovery of 2,049 people, which took the overall figure to 302,455. As for today's COVID patients, 204 fresh cases have been confirmed so far.
The Sri Lanka Army, meanwhile, launched a program today to inoculate sick, elderly and vulnerable people who are unable to travel to vaccine centres. The chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19 said that officials carrying out the program have been instructed to inoculate unvaccinated over 30s at these locations as well. In the meantime, a set of revised quarantine guidelines for tourists visiting the country were issued today, thereby cancelling the last circular issued on the matter.
The need for vaccinations continue to be ever more important, as global health studies show that individuals partially or fully vaccinated have a low chance of severe symptoms and death. Currently, health officials in Sri Lanka are doing just that, as a plan to partially inoculate all people over the age of 30 by September. As such, everything seems to be going according to plan, as 11,534,750 people have been given at least one vaccine dose so far. From this figure, 3,775,976 people have been fully inoculated. Yesterday, 360,693 vaccinations were carried out by health officials and army personnel throughout the country. 228,790 Sinopharm second doses were rolled out yesterday, with 81,000 people administered with the first dose of the same vaccine. 39,361 first doses of the Covishield vaccine were also administered yesterday, while 247 people received a second dose. The first and second doses of the Pfizer vaccine and its first Moderna jab was also rolled out yesterday. Meanwhile, the army launched a mobile vaccine program to inoculate the elderly, sick, handicapped and other vulnerable sections of society who are unable to go out to vaccine centres. The program commenced today under the patronage of the Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavindra Silva. Speaking at the launch event, the Army Commander said that the program, which will be carried out in the northern part of the Colombo district, will be extended to the southern part of the district tomorrow. He added that health officials carrying out this program have been instructed to also vaccinate over 30s in the homes they visit who have not been administered with at least one jab so far. The commander also expressed hopes of expanding the program to other areas in the country as well. The general public could call on the hotline 1906 or the telephone number 011 286 0002 to receive the service. In the meantime, the Director General of Health Services, Dr. Asala Gunawardana, released a new set of guidelines pertaining to the quarantine measures that should be followed by travellers arriving in Sri Lanka from overseas. The DG stated that the former circular dated for the 15th of last month has been cancelled. According to the new circular, fully vaccinated travellers who have not arrived from or transited to India or a travel-restricted country and were released from the quarantine with an on-arrival negative COVID-19 PCR test do not need to undergo a COVID-19 PCR test on day 7. The circular listed out the travel-restricted countries as South Africa, Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Namibia, Swaziland, Zambia and Zimbabwe. However, unvaccinated children between the ages of 2 to 18 years travelling with fully vaccinated parents should undergo a COVID-19 PCR test on day 7. The circular further noted that all foreign nationals who have been granted approval to arrive from the travel-restricted countries have to undergo mandatory institutional quarantine irrespective of their vaccination status at a quarantine hotel or centre. Such persons will be released from institutional quarantine only after obtaining a negative PCR test done on day 14 of arrival in Sri Lanka. The measures must also be adhered by Sri Lankan and dual citizens and foreign national spouses or children.
We'll see you after this short break. Bear with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, with teachers and principals, trade unions sticking to their guns, even if it means students staying without classes for the next 2 or 3 months, Cabinet Subcommittee member Minister Prasanna Ranatunga announces that talks with unions will commence from tomorrow.
Today is the 31st day of the ongoing strike by teachers and principals unions. With the suspension of protest marches due to the current pandemic situation in the past couple of days, having given the public some respite, it proved to be short-lived, as union leaders representing 50 unions staged a sit-in protest at Independence Square today. This was in lieu of a planned march that was one of the many that was suspended.
නිරෝධය නීති රීති ආරක්ෂා කරමින් අපි මේ විරෝධතාවයෙන් නියැලෙන්නේ ආණ්ඩුවට බල කරන්න මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳන්නේ නැත්නම් තවදුරටත් මේ රටේ අනෙකුත් වෘත්තීය සමිති සියල්ල සූදානම් මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳීම වෙනුවෙන් ඒ බල කිරීමට අවතීන වෙන්න.
ප්‍රසන්න රණතුංග අමාත්‍යවරයා කිව්වා දැන් මේ අරගලය දේශපාලන වමනාවන් තියෙන ඒවත් බලන්න ඕනේ මේකෙදි කියලා. කමිටුවට පත් කරපු ප්‍රසන්න රණතුංග කියන අමාත්‍යවරයා පූර්ව නිගමනයකින් නම් කටයුතු කරන්නේ. ඉතින් මේකේ යුක්තියක් ඉටු කළ හැකිද මේක? ඒක නිසා අපි කියනවා මාසයක්ද මාස දෙකක්ද කාලය පිළිබඳ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. අපිට පුළුවන් ප්‍රශ්න විසඳෙන තුරු මේ අරගලේ පෙරට ගෙනියන්න.
අද අපේ රටේ දරුවෝ 41 ලක්ෂයක් ඉගෙන ගන්න බලන් ඉන්නවා. ගුරු සටනට වහාම විසඳුම් දීලා දරුවන්ට ඉගෙන ගන්න තියෙන අයිතිය හදන්න. හැබැයි සඳුදා මේක විසඳුවේ නැත්නම් අපි ආණ්ඩුවට කියනවා කොවිඩ් අවසන් වෙනකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ටත් යන්න තැනක් හොයාගන්න වෙයි.
Meanwhile, Cabinet Subcommittee member Minister Prasanna Ranatunga says that it hopes to hold daily discussions with the unions until a solution is finally arrived at.
ආරම්භක සාකච්ඡාවක් විතරයි සිද්ධ කරේ. අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම්තුමාව ගෙනල්ලා සාකච්ඡාව කරා. හෙට ඉඳන් දිගටම අපි වෘත්තීය සමිතිත් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරනවා.
In other local stories, the Consumer Affairs Authority today permitted Laughs Gas PLC to raise gas prices after months of waiting for a response from the government, which led to the company halting its imports. Accordingly, the new price of a 12.5 kilogram cylinder of Laughs gas is set at 1,856 rupees from today. However, the company chairman says that despite being unhappy with the increment, imports will recommence and consumers can expect availability in a week.
With the increase in liquefied petroleum gas prices in the global market, both Laughs Gas as well as Litrogas Lanka requested the government to allow them to increase the price of the 5 kilogram as well as the 12.5 kilogram domestic gas cylinders since the month of May. With no approvals for any price hike for the longest time, one of the providers, Loves, decided to stop imports in the latter part of July, stating that they are facing difficulties in opening letters of credit and in obtaining foreign currency. As a result, a gas shortage was created in the market, making it difficult for consumers to fulfill their daily needs. Considering this situation, the Consumer Affairs Authority allowed Laughs Gas today to increase the price of its 5 kilogram cylinder by 145 rupees and its 12.5 kilogram product by 363 rupees. Accordingly, the new price of a 12.5 kilogram gas cylinder is 1,856 rupees. The price of the 5 kilogram cylinder will now stand at 743 rupees.
මේ ප්‍රමාණය වුණත් පිරිවැයට සංසන්දනය කරනකොට ප්‍රමාණවත් නැහැ. අපි ඇත්තටම මැයි සහ ජූනි මාසවල ලෝක වෙළඳ පොලේ මිල සාමාන්‍ය අගය අනුව අපිට ලැබිය යුතු මිල වැඩි කිරීම තමයි රුපියල් 475. ඊට පස්සේ ජූනි සහ ජූලි මාසවල ලෝක වෙළඳ පොලේ ගෑස් මිල ගත්තම ඒක රුපියල් 675ක් වගේ ප්‍රමාණයක්. ඉතින් අපිට ලැබිලා තියෙන්නේ අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රමාණයට අඩුයි. නමුත් ලංකාවේ පාරිභෝගිකයෝ ගැන කල්පනා කරලා අපි වහාම ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන පරිදි ගෑස් නැවතවතාවක් ඇනවුම් කරලා ගෙන්නන්න කටයුතු කරමින් තියෙනවා. පාරිභෝගිකයට ගෑස් සිලින්ඩරේ කඩේට ගිහිල්ලා ගේන්න තවද කීයක් බලන් ඉන්නවා. අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා වැඩිම වුණොත් දවස් 7ක් වගේ කාලයක් ඇතුළත අපිට මේක සම්පූර්ණ කරන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් සම්පූර්ණ වශයෙන්ම වෙළඳපොළ සම්තෘප්තිමත් වෙන්නට මේ තියෙන හිඟියත් එක්ක මම හිතනවා මාසයක් විතර යයි.
However, the country's national gas provider Litrogas Lanka will provide stocks to the consumers at the existing price of rupees 1,493.
රජය පාඩුව විඳදරාගෙන ලිත්‍රෝ සමාගම විසින් පෙර මිලටම ඒ ගෑස් ලබා දීමට අවශ්‍ය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග අනිවාර්යෙන්ම අරගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඒක නිෂ්පාදන ධාරිතාවය වැඩි කරලා තිබෙනවා. ඇනවුම් ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි කරලා තිබෙනවා. ගෑස් සිගයක් ඇති වෙයි කියන අනුසිබියක් ඇති කරගත යුතු වන්නේ නැහැ.
ගෑස් හිඟයට රජයට බනින එක සාධාරණ නැහැ. මොකද ජනතාවට පීඩනය පටවන්න බැරි නිසා රජයේ ගෑස් සමාගම විශාල අලාභයක් සෑම සිලින්ඩරයකටම විඳගෙන ගෑස් සපයනවා. නමුත් පුද්ගලිකාංශයට එලෙසින් කරන්න බෑ. ලෝක වෙළඳ පොලේ පවතින මිලට වඩා අඩු මිලකට ගෑස් දෙන්න කිව්වට එහෙම දෙන්න බෑ.
Now then, with the tenure of the Right to Information Commission due to expire next month, Transparency International Sri Lanka has called for the appointment of members be done so that the independence of the Commission stays intact. Transparency International Sri Lanka and a few other organisations have submitted applications for the positions at the RTI Commission.
The tenure of the Right to Information Commission, which is the central oversight and appellate body established under the Right to Information Act of Sri Lanka, is set to expire in September this year. Transparency International Sri Lanka has called out for the appointment of the new commissioners in line with the procedures set out in the Rights to Information Act No. 12 of 2016. The commission consists of a chairperson and 4 members who serve a term of 5 years. Prior to the passing of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution, the appointments were made by the President upon the recommendations provided by the Constitutional Council. However, the 20th Amendment changed the manner in which the RTI Commission is appointed. The Constitutional Council, which is mentioned in the Act, is no longer functional and has been replaced with the Parliamentary Council. As such, the Parliamentary Council should obtain nominations from the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, organizations of publishers, editors, and media persons and other civil society organizations to fill the positions of the RTI Commission. Transparency International said it hopes that the President would take these observations into serious consideration when making appointments for the Commission in keeping with the democratic process stipulated in the Rights to Information Act of Sri Lanka. Executive Director of TISL Nadishani Pereira stated that over the past 5 years, the Rights to Information Commission of Sri Lanka was able to deliver commendable decisions that protected the people's right to information as they acted as an independent body. The nominations by a number of civil society organizations, including Transparency International Sri Lanka, for a position in the Commission were compiled and handed over to the Parliamentary Council yesterday.
The Department of Meteorology says that the showery conditions prevailing in the southwestern parts of the island will reduce from tomorrow. In the meantime, landslide warnings for 3 districts were issued by the National Building Research Organisation today.
The Department of Meteorology issued an advisory this morning warning of heavy rains. It says that the showery conditions prevailing in the southwestern parts of the island are expected to continue during the day. Further, showers are also expected today in the western, Sabaragamu and central provinces.
Due to low-level atmospheric disturbances in the vicinity of Sri Lanka, today morning we are experiencing heavy rain in central and Sabaragamu provinces, so more than 100 millimeters rainfall were received at these areas. So we are expecting these showery conditions continue until tomorrow morning. So especially in the western and Sabaragamu provinces, so that area we are expected more than 100 millimeters rainfall during next 24 hours. So also in the other areas like Uva, eastern and north central provinces, so that areas also we are expecting thunder showers tonight and tomorrow morning. Tomorrow we are expecting shower conditions little bit reducing, but still southwest monsoon conditions continue over the island, so therefore shower conditions can be expected in the southwestern part of the country.
In the meantime, the National Building Research Organisation issued a landslide warning for the Kandy, Nuwara and Ratnapura districts. The public in these districts have been urged to pay close attention to the pre-landslide signs.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the hearings of the case that seeks to challenge the extradition of Huawei Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou to the United States concluded in the High Court of British Columbia, Canada, where a verdict is expected on the 19th of August. Meng's lawyers filed 4 major complaints about abuse of judicial procedures in the case, accusing the Canadian and US governments and law enforcement of abusing their powers.
The Canadian High Court of British Columbia finished court hearings on judicial remedy in the case of Huawei Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou earlier this week. Meng's defense argued the previous day that there had been so much abuse of judicial processes and violations of Meng's rights that the only remedy was to end the extradition proceedings. Meng's lawyers had filed 4 major complaints about abuse of judicial procedures in the case, and related hearings have been completed in succession. Prosecution lawyers representing the governments of the United States and Canada, however, on Tuesday denied that the governments and law enforcement departments have had any misconduct over the case and rejected Meng's judicial remedy appeal. The court plans to finish all the hearings on the case by August 19th, with no specific verdict made so far. Over the past 2 years, Meng and her defense team have experienced a torrid time in court, challenging the extradition, claiming the case is political and it has resulted in what they term double criminality and an abusive process. The first appeal was rejected by the court on the 27th of May 2020. Meng has been under house arrest in Vancouver and is fighting against extradition to the US through lengthy legal procedures. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has repeatedly urged Canada to release Meng and ensure her safe return to China.
Now then, to take a look at the Colombo Bourse, shares ended more than 1% lower today, weighed down by losses in industrial and financial stocks. The CSE All Share Price Index ended 1.42% lower at 7,980.91 points, while the S&P SL20 Index of more liquid stocks fell 52.15 points to close at 2,989.02. Here's Dimantha Matthew with a brief report on today's market performance.
So we are continuing to see the volatility in the market, so ups and downs and there day in day out. So today, after yesterday's spike in the market, today again we are seeing a major drop in the market, drop above 100 points. Today, turnover wise, we are seeing very high levels of turnover, 4.1 billion rupees. The number of transactions is extremely high, 37,000 transactions during the day, so almost double of what we saw yesterday. What we saw today is a bit of higher level of panic selling that was there in the market, especially towards the second half of the day. Overall, we are seeing shares across the board decline in value, mainly the dollar income companies which had a lot of buying interest over the last few days. In addition to that, we are seeing a number of counters providing results during this period, so that is also having reactions in the market, positives and negatives.
Meanwhile, in the currency market, there was once again no change to the rupee today, as it stayed at 202.89 cents against the US dollar. Let's now take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. The United Nations has warned that up to 18 million Afghans may need emergency humanitarian assistance, with 400,000 already displaced by the rapid gains made by Taliban fighters in the past month since the US pulled troops out of the country. According to US intelligence assessments, the capital, Kabul, is expected to fall in the next 90 days.
Scores of Afghans have fled their homes as Taliban insurgents sweep through the country, taking control of provincial capitals. Over 400,000 people have been internally displaced, leaving 18 million in need of humanitarian assistance, the United Nations humanitarian agency UNICEF said earlier this week. Taliban insurgents captured the city of Ghazni today, the 9th provincial capital they have seized in a week, as US intelligence said the capital, Kabul, just 150 kilometers to the northeast, could fall to the insurgents within just 90 days. Fighting has also been intense in the southern city of Kandahar. The city hospital had received scores of bodies of members of the armed forces and some wounded Taliban, a doctor said late yesterday. The Taliban said they had captured Kandahar's provincial prison as well as airports outside the cities of Kunduz and Sheberghan in the north and Farah in the west, making it even more difficult to supply beleaguered government forces. The speed of the Taliban advance has sparked widespread recriminations over US President Joe Biden's decision to withdraw US troops and leave the Afghan government to fight alone. The Taliban control about two-thirds of Afghanistan, with the last of the US-led international forces set to leave by the end of the month.
Residents of Canberra are gearing up for a long lockdown after the Australian capital reported its first COVID-19 cases in more than a year. Meanwhile, in China, a woman has given birth to triplets while infected with the virus in what was a carefully planned operation involving a team of special medical experts.
A woman diagnosed with COVID-19 gave birth to triplets on Wednesday morning at a designated hospital in southwest China's Yunnan province, the first case of its kind in the country. The 29-year-old mother was diagnosed with coronavirus in early July at 28 weeks into her pregnancy and was admitted to the Ruli Dai Hospital of the Traditional Chinese Medicine, the designated hospital for treating COVID-19 patients. A medical team consisting of 32 leading doctors from the state, provincial and municipal levels were rushed to the city and customized the treatment plan for her while preventing premature birth. The medical team conducted a series of joint consultations to make a diagnosis and treatment plan, which finally succeeded in helping keeping the extended gestational age of 32 weeks. The Kenyan oxygen production firm is doubling the production this year to keep up with the surging demand from hospitals treating critically ill COVID-19 patients. Demand for the commodity has soared to 880 tons from 410 tons before the pandemic, the Ministry of Health said, causing a steep shortage due to the lack of installed capacity. The East African nation is confronting a severe fourth wave of COVID-19 infections, putting pressure on health facilities. To surmount that problem, the company is expected to invest another $15 million next year to build an air separation unit for the production of liquid oxygen, leading to a 10-fold increase to 20 tons per day. In the meantime, eyewitness video footage showed long lines of Canberra residents queuing up to pay for groceries at Casey Market today after the announcement of a snap one-week lockdown from this evening. The lockdown was announced after Australia's capital reported its first locally acquired case of COVID-19 in more than a year. Authorities said that one-week lockdown was needed as they are unsure how the COVID-19 case, a man in his 20s, acquired it. Neighbouring Victoria State today reported 21 new locally acquired cases, up from 20 a day earlier, as the 5 million residents of Melbourne, the state capital, prepare to enter second week of lockdown.
An Indian rocket carrying a powerful Earth observation satellite failed to fire fully today in something of a setback for the country's space program. The satellite, meant for quick monitoring of natural disasters such as cyclones, cloudbursts and thunderstorms, was launched on a geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle from the Satish Dhawan Space Centre in southern India. The first two stages of the liftoff had been smooth, but the rocket failed in its final phase due to a technical anomaly, according to the ISRO in a post on social media website Twitter. India has built a reputation as a maker of Earth imaging satellites and the ability to launch them into low orbits at a fraction of the cost of Western agencies. However, it has moved into the more lucrative area of launching heavier geostationary satellites that are used for communications and meteorology in the past several years. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.